Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we love to talk about movies. Here today, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. I saw this a bit earlier in the week. I've had some time to kind of mull my thoughts over and just wanted to share them all with you. So let's go ahead and dive on in. In this movie, a charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embark on an epic quest to retrieve a lost relic, but things go dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. So I'm gonna keep this spoiler free, and I think, but if you don't want to know anything about the film, don't watch any reviews. I think I was aware of the Rotten Tomatoes score going into this film, and that was about it. I didn't see any reviews, but when I heard this film was coming out, I checked my expectations at the door. I'm like, maybe at best it'll be a fine movie, but I wasn't gonna get my hopes up, and then I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score was like in the 80s, and then it hit the 90s, and I think I checked it one day. It was at like 87, and I'm like, and then I waited. I was like, man, that's got my hopes up real high. And then like the day before or the day of when I went to see the movie, I'm like, oh, I'll check it again. It's probably gone down because it's had more time to get some reviews, and then it went up into the 90s, and I was like, man, that's I was hoping to get my expectations lower. But even with my expectations a bit higher based off of the Rotten Tomatoes score, it met my expectations, and it was exactly what I was looking for in this film. So what does that mean? Overall, this is a movie I'd give a letter grade of a B to. It's one that I really enjoyed and I had a lot of fun with. If I shaded it, it would probably be a B plus or on the high side of B. But it didn't quite do enough to get it into like the great category of movies. So it was a very good movie for me, but not one that I would necessarily go out of my way and say, yes, I think most people should see this movie, or this is a very unique experience. It's a lot of fun, and also to give some context, I've played D&D quite a bit. If it means anything to you, I've mostly played 4th edition. I've played just a little bit of 5th, but I love D&D. I haven't played it too much recently, but like I've played in campaigns that spanned, over a year where we would meet and like every week we'd play on Saturday and we'd go from like noon to midnight. Like I love D&D, so that part of that is why I kept my expectations low, is I didn't want to get my hopes up too high and then have them not met. But I think this movie is made in a way where it's going to be, I think it's accessible to everybody. Like, you don't have to have played D&D, but for me it was such a special experience having played D&D. I think they capture so much of what it's like to play. Like, the movie just feels like a session of D&D that's been filmed, and it doesn't feel terribly different. Like, the characters feel like characters that you'd have in a campaign, and one that I would play, or the world that they're in feels like something that my dungeon master, my DM created, where it's not maybe the like a completely most thought out world that you're gonna find in a book like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, but it's like it's pretty good, and it's got enough interesting stuff there. So it, like, watching this movie just felt so much D&D, and I think that's a huge accomplishment for the makers of this film. So because of that, though, I think like if you haven't played D&D, then it comes across as just like a good fun movie, but not like groundbreaking in the genre of fantasy. So those are kind of the main things that I liked a lot about it. It's definitely just a fun ride. It's not like the most revolutionary story. The characters aren't like the best characters, but that's part of what I liked about it. It very much felt like these were characters that you'd get at the beginning of a D&D campaign. Like, this is what you'd start off with at level 1, and they have some backstory, but it's not the most interesting. It's interesting enough, though, and then kind of with D&D, the interesting part is what you play out and kind of where you go with those characters, and that, I think they captured that here. That said, though, I think my favorite character was the Bard. It was Chris Pine. They all did feel a little bit generic, even though I think they were interesting enough. I think the Paladin was also really well done. He was very amusing and kind of different from the rest of the group. But I think each are done well enough to kind of capture what like class they are and that sort of a thing, because we had, I think, a sorcerer and a fighter and a druid and a rogue, if you're counting the bard's daughter, but things like that. It was nice to kind of see the variety of the classes. But yeah, and then it also, like, the stakes get kind of large, but they're not like over the top large. There again, it felt like, kind of the for where the story goes and what they end up kind of encountering felt very similar to what you would encounter in the first few levels of a D&D campaign. So yeah, I like seeing kind of the different Easter eggs in there as well. Definitely like references and items and creatures that, having played D&D, I was happy to see in the movie. And then I really liked how they, like, their actions had consequences. The characters weren't just along for the ride where they were just kind of doing stuff, but stuff was going to happen as it happened. No, like, they take actions and then those change where the story goes, and that happens constantly. They're not like, not everything is the most impactful decision, but their decisions have consequences that play out in the movie and shape where the story goes, which is great. I think like movies should do that. They don't always do that, and I liked that they did that here, because there again, that's just very much what D&D is. It all comes down to the decisions of the players. Sometimes you're limited by your dice rolls and stuff like that, but yeah, that was another thing that I think they captured perfectly in this film. I liked the creativity as well, where like they were limited in kind of their abilities and maybe what items they have, but they get new items and like, oh, we can use it this way, and they got, yeah, just very creative. And there again, it felt like a D&D session where you're like, well, these are the pieces that we have, but we want to do that thing. How can we be creative and get that thing done with what we have? So, and I think they did a pretty good job of like incorporating items that they got and abilities that they get as things move forward, and not just let them kind of disappear. There was maybe like one instance where I'm like, you have this ability, why are you not using it now, as opposed to just being in mortal danger? But that was like one exception. I think for the most part they do a good job of not like overlooking the resources that they have when they're kind of trying to get out of situations. But yeah, so that's let's see, that's kind of the main things that stood out to me with the film. I think I think this film, like, I was very happy to see it have a pretty good opening weekend at the box office. I think it's great to see for, like a new movie that's not part of a series to have that good of an opening weekend. I'm curious to see if they'll continue to make more movies in this series. I would like to see more. I really like the production value and kind of the world that they created, but I'm not sure kind of what I would be hopeful for in a sequel. I think I would certainly go and watch a sequel if they made a sequel with these characters. I think my preference though would be to make a new D&D movie with a new set of characters and like a new story to tell. I think that would be really cool, either in the world that they created or in another world. I think maybe doing another world would be a little bit more interesting. I think in the one that they set up, there's like a couple nitpicks that I had with it, where like the majority of the people we see are humans. There's very few like other races. I mean, they show, you get like a sample of a lot of different races, but it's like one or two characters and that just kind of pop up. But most people are humans. But there again, I think that's kind of fine. That's probably just a production value thing. I'm sure it costs more money to have other races in there, and they were probably just limiting it, especially as the first movie of the series. And then another thing, like having played D&D, it's not like absolutely essential, but what, like, the gods of the D&D world have a pretty big presence, and there's like a lot of classes that are like religious classes. And I know we didn't, like, in the main party there weren't a whole lot of religious classes, but like the paladins do serve a specific deity, and like we didn't get that with this paladin. And like in general there wasn't kind of that aspect in the film. And I mean, I think that's fine. I think it works. You don't necessarily need religion in there, but like adding in the gods is like another dimension to D&D that, especially at like the lower levels where you kind of maybe, like if you're a level 1 character, need to rely on the gods a bit more. I think it was interesting that that was kind of absent from this film, especially because like I played in campaigns where we're at like much higher levels, and we're actually getting to kind of like not quite god status. We're a little bit away from that, but maybe like demigod status. And so if you kind of don't have that concept of the gods in general, you don't, I don't like, that's not something you can necessarily get to. I mean, you could, but that was just something that I thought was interesting. I don't know that it was a pro or a con on the movie, but like in my experience of D&D, the gods that are created in the D&D lore are definitely a bit more present. But yeah, I think I would like, yeah, I would definitely like to see more movies like this. I think it was very well done. Whether that's with the same characters or new ones, I think I'd prefer new ones, but I would see other ones. I think they could also look at doing, if they wanted to, like Paramount Plus shows, because I think it's owned by Paramount. So it wouldn't have to be movies. I think it could be interesting to do like a season-long storyline as well, and I feel like that would probably be popular. But yeah, so that's yeah, mostly positive things about the film. I think the music was also pretty good. It wasn't, I listened to the soundtrack after the film, and there weren't like a ton that I saved aside for like my favorites playlist, but I enjoyed it though as a whole, even though like none of the sounds or the individual songs stood out to me. But that's done by Lauren Balfe, who does a lot of good music these days. So yeah, overall though, I think it's I put this kind of in the same category as Warcraft for me. That one came out several years ago. I quite enjoyed that one. I know critically it wasn't received all that well, but I really liked just the world that was built and the production value. And I think this was kind of similar in that, where like they did the movie right. It didn't feel cheap. It didn't feel like super green screeny and like cheesy fantasy that you kind of sometimes get. It's a fun adventure film that I think, yeah, anybody would enjoy. So yeah, if you're looking for something to see, I say definitely check this out. I think it was fun to see in theaters. I saw it in Dolby, and that's always a great experience. So yeah, if you've had a chance to see it though, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Who was your favorite character of the ones that we got? Mine was definitely Chris Pine in the Bard, but I did really like the dynamic between him and the fighter as well. I Yeah, I think their duo was probably my favorite. I also like the villain though. I think that was also very classic, like typical. It felt very D&D for how the villain was set up and how the villain kind of connects to the characters. But yeah, let me know your favorite parts of the film. If you have any thoughts on like, would you like to see a direct sequel to this with the same characters? Would you not really care for any more D&D movies, or would you maybe like to see more D&D movies with this production value and maybe focusing on different characters or a different kind of world? Because that's the thing with D&D, they like established like there's lore that's established, but it's not hard and fast on certain things like the specific realm that you play in. Like that's kind of up to the imagination of the DM, which is kind of fun. So yeah, share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.